So welcome back. Today we will be discussing federalism, or as the subtitle says, who has the power to do what. That's a very easy way to think of it. Federalism is a power-sharing scheme, in essence, between the federal government and the states. And there's even, a power-sharing kind of scheme, a federalism sort of thing between the states and townships or counties. But we'll get into that a little later. I would say this is probably one of the top 5 most important concepts, lessons you're going to have in this course. So download these videos, save the lecture slides. You're going to be seeing this certainly on the next test and the test after, and probably the final exam too. So this is so important what we do here. And you need to pay attention. You need to be with it. And if there is even an iota of doubt about what federalism is or how it functions after you listen to this, you need to get in touch with me. All right, so let's define it. As I said, a power-sharing scheme in essence. Power is divided between the national government in Washington, D.C., state governments. The state governments have certain rights. The federal government has certain rights. The Constitution protects both of these governments, and certainly we live in a nation that's far too big to have everything run out of Washington, D.C. So another way to think of it, it's a formal constitutional arrangement in which individuals are citizens of both a nation and a state. So most of you, I know I have a few of you who are from elsewhere. Most of you are citizens of the state of Illinois. You're also citizens of the United States. So this is the definition I'll use on the test. It's from the ICC State and Local Government Handbook. I told the 10 a.m. class, but I'll tell you guys if I haven't already, if I differentiate, because a lot of you are worried about notes, if I differentiate the font in some way or go about pointing out like, hey, you need to know this, there's a good chance that's going to appear on a test or something like that, a quiz, an assignment, whatever. So there you go. A political system in which national and regional governments share powers and are considered independent equals. Let's just let that soak in for 2 seconds more. All right. So why do we have this? Why is federalism a thing? Well, we need to decentralize politics as much as we can. As I said a moment ago, our country is far too big for everything to be run out of Washington, D.C. Just imagine if Washington, D.C. issued driver's licenses to everybody in America. It'd be a nightmare. It would be, you'd never get one. I mean, you'd apply when you were 16, and you'd get your driver's license when you were 21, maybe. Election laws. They can't count all the ballots, right? So the states step in, the localities, and it's decentralized in that way. So Illinois takes care of its own election for federal offices, state offices. They make a report to the federal government about who won, and that way, we can get a result in a reasonable amount of time. Participation, decentralization also increases participation because there's more to do, more to decide, and more people are required. So if, I tell this to classes every semester. The decentralization is a good thing because any governing that is worth anything, that's going to affect your life, is going to happen at either the town or your state level, your town or your state. Your mayor and Governor Pritzker at the moment will have much more of an effect on your life day to day than anything that President Biden and Vice President Harris do in Washington, D.C. Judicial power, we need state courts, local courts, people to handle the littler, I don't want to say the minutia, but the smaller offenses, parking tickets. Should the Supreme Court hear cases about parking tickets? I don't think that's really an appropriate use of time. And we have decentralization of policies. Different states have different laws regarding any number of issues. So what are some of these different policies? Well, this is kind of changing on the federal level. We might see this soon. Maybe the criminalization of marijuana. It's in its entirety. States have made it legal. Certain states, Colorado, I believe a certain amount is legal here in Illinois now. But that's not maybe the case in Idaho or Nebraska, and that's just the state law. Now, we'll talk about this in a minute, but federal law supersedes state law when the laws conflict. So this federal system that we have now was chosen as our second form of government. The first form of government we had was what was called a confederacy, a confederal form of government. I don't know if you would have read in your book about this yet, but assignment 2, I think, book assignment 2 has to do with the Articles of Confederation. But it wasn't working. Right. There was no way for taxes to be collected at a national level. States could refuse. They could refuse to send troops. They could refuse to do a whole host of things. It was as if we were 13 independent nations at that time. So we had the Confederation, as I said. So another type of government is unitary, and we're going to look at all three of these. So unitary, confederal, and federal. That's all three types that we're going to look at here. And again, if I'm differentiating the font, it's probably going to appear on a test. So we have a unitary system of government. So unitary, pretty much all the legal power is located in the central government. Now this is changing again still, but the example of the United Kingdom being a unitary form of government is still true. So the central government may create or abolish regional or local governments as it sees fit. And sub-governments can exercise only those responsibilities and powers granted to them by the central government. So how that works is like this. So they have a central government in London. It's Parliament. It's located in the Palace of Westminster. That's why I wrote a W there. So the Scots want a certain measure of independence. Okay. So they set up the Scottish Parliament up in Edinburgh. And the Parliament in the United Kingdom says, all right, you can only handle tax. I'm not a good artist, and I don't anticipate I'm going to improve drawing on computers anytime soon. You can tax your citizens. You can pass legislation having to do with the environment. You can pass legislation to create jobs in Scotland. But you can't do anything with defense. You can't do anything that touches on international trade. so they can limit very much what this parliament, what this devolved parliament can do. So, tax, environment, jobs, but they can't touch defense or international trade. And they've done the same thing with the Welsh and Northern Ireland. They have their own individual devolved governments as well. No, still have the pen up. So a confederal government, that's the exact opposite of a unitary system. So the exact opposite of what we just discussed with the United Kingdom. That would be unitary. So the central government is very weak. The regional governments are powerful. A great example of a confederal government operating today successfully would be Switzerland with their canton systems. Think of a canton kind of like a mini state. I don't know that any of us could name the president of Switzerland off the top of our head. That's how incredibly unimportant the federal government, the central government, is in Switzerland. All the power is with the cantons. So regional jurisdictions, these cantons in the case of Switzerland, they establish a central government to deal with areas of mutual concern like defense, currency production, etc., etc., etc. But the central government's authority is severely restricted in other areas. So, we have Scotland, Northern Ireland, let's say. This is, I think, a little more relatable than a Swiss canton. And England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and England. So they all get together and say, hey, we're on, the same set of islands here. Let's get together. We'll create this parliament. There's a great old palace called Westminster that we'll have it at. We'll let them carry on with, national defense, the currency, the stuff like that. But England, you can, keep doing what you're doing, trading with the United States. Northern Ireland we'll partner with the Republic of Ireland on some trade of our own, and so on and so forth. So they only give to the central government what they want the central government to deal with. And again, I apologize. I am terrible at writing on a computer with this pen feature. So the federal system of government is what we have now in the United States. It falls between a confederacy and a unitary system. It has a minimum of 2 levels of government, although it oftentimes will have more. Now, depending on where you live, you could be subject to the laws of the United States, the laws of your state, the laws of your county, if there's a strong county government, the laws of your town. So you could be living under 4 levels of government, just depending on where you are. Each of these, but the minimum is 2. So, like when I ask on the test, as I think I will, how many levels of government at minimum are needed for a federal system, the right answer there is, it's not even close to where I was, is 2. So we vote all these people in. They're all legitimately elected, from the president to the governor to the mayor to the county board commissioner, whoever. They each get their power from we, the people. Each of these levels of government and the people who are in them can act directly on us within, if we're in their jurisdiction, and they can do so without permission from another authority. So if we break a town law well, the village police can come and arrest us. There'd be no appeal to the state police or the governor or whoever else. It's the village's business, wherever you live, or the county's business or the state's business. So each level of government is supreme in the powers that are given to it by their constitution or their governing document, their charter, going back to Magna Carta, whatever they call it. And each is protected by that charter, constitution, governing document from being destroyed by the other. So we're going to have a village, we're going to have a county, we're going to have a state, we're going to have a federal government. And there's nothing that any of these levels can do about it to abolish a form of government, a level of government. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to say there. All right. So let me get out of the way here. I know that many of you learn in different ways. This is how these things are set up. So again, to review the unitary system, we have the voters who set up a central government, who elect people to a central government. Like, if you remember from a moment ago, we were talking about this being, the United Kingdom being a prime example of a unitary system of government. The voters all vote for members of Parliament that go to Westminster. The members of Parliament in Westminster can establish regional governments like they did with Scotland, like they did with Wales, like they did with Northern Ireland. They grant these powers to the regional governments to do as they see fit, but not touch other things that they don't give in Westminster express permission for these devolved governments to do. A confederal system of government. I'm really trying here. If you remember, Switzerland is the example of that. Switzerland has these cantons, which are like mini states. The voters elect these independent governments, so the government of their canton, I'll just call it a state here to avoid confusion. They elect the government here of the state, and these independent governments get together and form a central government that takes care of the issues that they want it to handle and no other. Now, the federal system of government is what we have here in the United States. We vote for a minimum, again, I said, of two levels. So we vote for a state government. We vote for the government in Washington, D.C., who we want to send there. If we're getting fancy, we might vote for a county board commissioner or a mayor or something like that, but this level of government is surplus to requirement. You only need two, again, for purposes of the test. And they divide responsibilities. So the central government would take care of war. The regional government, the state, would take care of something like, okay, it says driver's license. I'm not even going to attempt it. A driver's license, if that was what was needed. And this is another way of looking at it. A unitary government, the power emanates out from the central government. The confederal government over here, the power comes from the parts, the states, the cantons, the subdivisions of whatever you want to call them. The federal government, the system, gives power back and forth. So the central government and the subunits, whatever they're called, in our case states, they share equal power. So, history of federalism here. we're going to make that a part 2.